Hi, I'm William,
And I'm Kat,
and this is Info on the Go.
answering questions you want to know.
Kat, we have another listener request.
Really? I'm excited. What are we talking about today?
The request was basically for meth and where did it come from?
On Info on the Go, history of methamphetamines, fascinating and troubling.
Crystal methamphetamine, a powerful central nervous system stimulant, is white or nearly clear in its pure form. Pure meth is colorless, typically snorted, smoked, injected, or consumed orally. Meth is extremely addictive and significantly more potent than other stimulants.
So it's not blue like in Breaking Bad?
No, it's
Mm,
clear,
well,
colorless. I guess colorless, clear in its
right,
purest form.
right. Methamphetamine, also known as meth, was first synthesized in 1893 by Japanese chemist Nagai Nagayoshi from ephedrine, a stimulant derived from the ephedra plant used in traditional Chinese medicine for over 5,000 years. He was Japan's first doctor of pharmacy.
Hey, you nailed that name, by the way. That was great.
Oh, thanks.
In 1919, Akira Ogata devised a simplified method to produce a crystallized form of the substance using phosphorus and iodine. This process led the groundwork to the modern production techniques, particularly in the context of illegal drug manufacturing. The crystallized form was more stable and potent, um, eventually serving as a precursor to the widespread use of methamphetamine across various industries.
The next pivotal chapter in the US came in the 1930s when methamphetamine was marketed under the brand name of Benzedrine. Initially celebrated as a miracle drug, it was prescribed for numerous ailments, including nasal congestion and fatigue. This period laid the foundation for methamphetamine's later application in both medicine and, unfortunately, recreational misuse.
And you remember our episode on opioids and drugs that were like, what was it? I think it was a company that said that their cough syrup that contained some form of opium in it was not addictive. I'm assuming Bizodrine was about the same way, right?
Right.
Just go pick you up some, and I mean, it would pretty much cure all for a little while anyway.
Right.
All right. So during this time in Berlin, Previdin was introduced to the civilian market in 1938. Previtin was used as a stimulant to increase alertness and reduce fatigue. It was also used by the Nazis. In one 4-month period in 1940, the German military gobbled up more than 35 million meth tablets. Seeing the impact, the Nazi high command wanted something stronger. Get 35 million meth tablets in 1940?
I mean, you can't lose if you can't feel anything.
I mean, and the high command was like, man, these guys are wanting to go all out here. We need something stronger now.
Right.
Create the super soldier.
Exactly. This led the Nazis to create DIX, containing Pervitin, cocaine, and morphine-based painkiller.
So not only were they on meth, they weren't feeling any pain either. Oh
No, like I
my
said, I mean you can't lose if you can't feel anything.
man.
That oof.
Can you
That's how they
imagine?
kept going for days. Ah,
Well, imagine with you got methamphetamine, you got morphine, and you got cocaine. I mean, oh my gosh.
that's all of it right there in one.
That's the so what it on the game, what is it oh my gosh, where they have the Nazi zombies?
Uh,
Oh my gosh, Call of Duty.
yes, I was gonna say Black Ops or
Yeah. I'm assuming that's where the DIX comes in at. Anyway, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
most certainly. The researcher who rediscovered this project, Wolf Kemper, said the aim was to use DIX to redefine the limits of human endurance. German doctors were enthusiastic about the results and planned to supply all German troops with the pills, but the war ended before DIX could be put into mass production, though it did see limited use among a handful of mini-sub and bibber pilots.
So the mini sub was a torpedo carrying craft used by the Nazis from 1943 to 1945. Although often called a human torpedo, it could not submerge, but was hard to detect during night operations. The Bibber was a German midget submarine as well, armed with torpedoes and mines.
We need to be clear that the Nazis were not the only ones using it during World War II. Methamphetamine and amphetamine were used by both Allied and Axis forces during that time as stimulants to enhance performance. The use of these drugs was initially encouraged by high ranking officials as the way to relax and reduce psychological effects of combat.
I don't know if being relaxed on meth is the right term.
Ah, I don't know. I have zero experience with it myself.
Well, I'm just
Um,
thinking about the Sudafed. Like when I get my sinus congestion, I use Sudafed, and I can often like in before the half-life or during the half-life of the drug, I can sometimes feel my heart race a little bit. So I try not to use it unless I really absolutely have to. I,
right,
I'm just saying they were wired.
for sure.
Yeah. Although methamphetamine underwent extensive testing by leading scientists to evaluate its ability to enhance physical and mental performance in fatigued subjects, the research failed to provide conclusive evidence to justify its approval for such use. Moreover, the findings emerged too late to significantly influence military strategies. The decision to adopt amphetamine by both the British and American militaries was based less on its scientific effectiveness in combating fatigue and more on its noticeable mood-altering effects. So just to put that in perspective, they didn't really care about what the scientific doctrine was. They were going by what they saw in the soldiers.
Right.
Military leaders observed that the drug boosted confidence, heightened aggression, and improved overall morale, making it appealing for use among troops. Well, I
Well,
mean, how could you be depressed if you're I don't know.
getting a real big dopamine high.
There you go. Hey, man, spoiler alert.
After the war in Germany, Pervitin was easily accessible on the black market and as a prescription drug. It was removed from medical supplies in the 1970s and 1980s and became illegal in the entire country after German reunification.
Well,
Ger-
you said it was easily accessible. I imagine they had tons of this stuff to supply the Nazis with. And then after the war, it's just stockpiled, right?
yeah, where is it going?
Yeah. Okay.
During the early 1960s, amphetamine was readily available in the United States and as an over the counter medication, often sold in the form of an inhaler. However, concerns about its misuse and rising abuse led the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to restrict its sales, requiring a physician's prescription for purchase. Announcing the new regulations, FDA Commissioner George L. Larick highlighted the alarming trend of methamphetamine abuse. In 1964, the FDA received 153 reports of methamphetamine misuse, nearly 3 times the 54 cases reported in 1963, and a stark increase compared to the mere 5 cases reported annually in 1960 to 1962.
I don't. I think the misuse was still going on in the 60,
Well, I
61,
mean,
62.
they were giving it out to the soldiers, uh, like Pez dispensers.
Well, and it's sold over the counter too. And I don't think you're gonna be like, I don't think the reporting. I think if it was in today's market and we're so connected, I think it would have been a lot higher. Does that
Most
make
likely.
sense?
Yes.
Okay.
No, that makes perfect sense.
And I think it took what 4 years while it was sold over the counter uh, for
Right.
the FDA to kind of step in.
Right. To be like, no, maybe we should regulate this a little bit.
And this happened in the 60s during the time of the hippies. So, I mean, it is what it is here.
They were getting high on all kinds of things then.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we need to do one on LSD.
Yes.
That should be coming. By 1970, methamphetamine was classified under the Controlled Substance Act, placing it under strict federal regulation. Alongside this legal action, a nationwide public education campaign was launched to inform the public of the dangers of methamphetamine abuse and discouraged its use. Wow, it took it took 10 years. Well, actually it took longer than that, but
Right.
anyway,
Well, it is what it is.
yeah.
Methamphetamine production evolved significantly from the 1970s to the 1990s, with its potency and prevalence skyrocketing. Initially, motorcycle gangs like the Hells Angels produced amphetamines using phenol 2-propanone, or P2P, a chemical later placed under federal control in 1980 to curb illegal production. However, this restriction led to the discovery that ephedrine, a widely available substance, could produce methamphetamine, a drug twice as potent as P2P derived amphetamine.
Well, and if you remember Breaking Bad, I mean, you kind of see that in there because at one point I think him and Jesse make P2P.
I believe so too.
Yeah. Mexican brothers Jesus and Luis Amsac. Am Amaket? What
A
did we say?
mezca.
Amesca, is that what we said? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Amesca. I knew I was gonna mess one up. Capitalized on this shift in the late 80s by importing pure ephedrine from overseas labs. By the mid 90s, they controlled about 80% of the methamphetamine distribution in the United States. What? Like,
That's a wow.
yeah, I mean, just think they give a whole new term to the mob there.
Right.
Um, or organized crime. There you go.
Right.
All right. I don't know if they were organized, but whatever. Leading to a surge in crime, hospitalizations, child abuse cases, and drug rehabilitation admissions. Their operation avoided detection by shipping ephedrine from nations like India to Mexico, bypassing the U.S. directly. Despite tighter export controls enacted after U.S. Customs agents intercepted large shipments, workarounds persisted. The
Mezcas.
Amescas brothers, were eventually arrested in 1998, but their methods highlighted the adaptability of meth producers.
I gotta know how big that shipment was that they caught, for them to finally, wake up and be like, wow, maybe we should pay attention to what people are shipping.
I'm just 80%. I mean, um, God, I mean that you just got to think over 50 states and they're controlling or they control 80% of the methamphetamine distribution. I can't even wrap my head around that.
They had a very good business.
Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't say that maybe all of the actions they did were probably morally sound. I don't know. I don't know these folks, but
that had to be it. I mean, they had to be shipping in major quantities and to still avoid,
detection.
yeah.
That's why I'm saying I gotta know how big that shipment was that they found. It had to have been huge and substantial.
I wonder how they finally brought them down.
Right.
I'll have to look that up after this.
That sounds like a good episode.
Hmm. Okay.
We're going to shift gears to talk about Adderall and Ritalin. We have to go back to the 1930s. Both medications used to treat attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. Amphetamines, the main ingredient in Adderall, were first used in the 1930s to treat nasal congestion. Ritalin, which contains methylphenidate, was introduced in 1955.
In 1937, Benzedrine was introduced as an over-the-counter inhaler, as we talked about earlier. In 1943, Disoxin, or methamphetamine, 1955, Ritalin, methylphenidate, and biphenadrine. This was a mixture of amphetamine and dextroamphetamine. 1960 came Adderall, which was a mixture of amphetamine and dextroamphetamine salts. So there's your four top drugs and when they came out. ADHD is one of the most prevalent psychiatric disorders in childhood. If it affects 1 in 10 Americans aged 4 to 17, over 6 million children and teens. The primary treatment is prescription stimulants like Adderall and Ritalin, which help manage core symptoms, hyperactivity, impulsivity, and inattention. And I guess here we should say, we're not. Um, there are some cases where I guess these drugs should be used, and we're going to talk a lot about that, right?
Yes. Yes. And I'm sure we all know somebody that's either been prescribed or has at least tried these, any of
Yeah.
these. I know plenty of people that were prescribed them at an early age. And man, the stories.
Yeah.
Modern ADHD treatment began in 1937 when Dr. Charles Bradley discovered the calming effects of the stimulant benzodrine on children. Today's ADHD medications, which work by increasing dopamine levels in the brain, are effective for about 80% of users but are classified as Schedule II drugs due to their high potential for abuse and dependence.
For children under 6, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends behavior therapy as a first treatment, with medication as a secondary option if necessary. Behavioral strategies such as structured routines and classroom interventions can also benefit older youth. Um, Research suggests that children who start with behavior therapy may see faster improvement compared to those who begin the medication. And again, I think I'm hoping, well, for me, I know there's going to be cases where the drug has to be used, and I think, we're not condoning that by any means whatsoever.
R- Right. But I mean, also, if you need it, take your medicine as prescribed.
Yes, absolutely. And that is the other thing, definitely under a doctor's supervision or, a doctor's, I guess, prescribed. Um, there you
Right.
go. Okay.
Despite the effectiveness of therapy, most children and adults with ADHD rely on medication. However, stimulant abuse is rising, particularly among college students who use these drugs illicitly to enhance focus or stamina. Long term use can lead to dependence, addiction, and withdrawal symptoms. Balancing the proven effects of ADHD medications with their risks prevents a growing challenge for school counselors and healthcare providers who must help students manage symptoms while minimizing potential harm.
So we kind of went full circle here. The origins of methamphetamines to become crystallized methamphetamines by using red phosphorus and iodine. So let's get into the effects of methamphetamines on the brain and the body. And I guess first we'll talk about the effects on the brain. Methamphetamine creates a euphoric rush by flooding the brain with dopamine, a neurotransmitter that influences movement, emotions, and pleasure. For context here, normal activities like sex increase dopamine levels to 200 units, while cocaine spikes levels to 350 units. Methamphetamine, however, can rise dopamine levels to a staggering 1,250 units, producing an unparalleled high. Wow, no wonder it's so abused. Like,
Yeah,
man, I,
you're
I,
just
mm,
forced to be happy.
I mean, gosh, I mean, you think like cocaine spikes 350 units. I mean, that's like, geez, I don't know. That's 4 times the rush.
Right.
Hmm.
That's insane. This unnatural surge of dopamine makes meth highly addictive. Over time, users require larger dose to achieve the same effects as the brain's natural dopamine production diminishes. Meth addiction often leads to depression and hopelessness during withdrawal, prompting users to relapse. Recovery is possible, but the brain's dopamine system can take a long time to normalize.
And I think we kind of touched on that too during our opioid show, our episode when we talked about, you got to keep doing more to try to reach that initial high that you're chasing, I guess is what we're saying.
Right.
While noticeable improvements might occur within a few weeks of stopping the substance use, Full recovery of dopamine system can take months, years, particularly with heavy or long-term drug use. The length of time needed for dopamine levels to stabilize depends on factors like the type of substance used, frequency used, individual biology, and the person's overall health. Engaging in healthy activities like regular exercise, balanced nutrition, and therapy can help support the brain's natural process of restoring dopamine balance. Wow, so I mean, it can affect you for years.
Yeah. I mean, your brain trying to rewire how to make its own dopamine,
That is the
and
best.
you still have to straddle life.
Yeah, and
Oof.
and that's the best analogy. Letting your brain rewire itself after going through all that. But just think if you've messed with those dopamine levels, the things that you normally get, that feeling from natural feelings, that's probably lost.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Beyond the Text, the podcast where intellectual history comes to life. Dive into the minds of philosophers, historians, and thinkers who shape the world we live in today. Each episode, we unravel complex ideas, explore fascinating topics, and break down the big concepts you won't find in your average history book. Join Samuel Woodall and Jack Thompson every week for a journey into the heart of ideas. Subscribe now on your favourite platform, and let's go beyond the text together.
I would think lost a little bit. I mean, you have to figure out how to be your own person without it.
Yeah, I
Again,
imagine that would take some time. And if anybody has experienced something like that and they want to write in and or email us, I would love to hear that.
yeah. Now let's talk about the effects of meth on the body. Use heightens alertness, speeds up the heart rate, and suppresses appetite. Users may feel euphoric, hyperfocused, or empowered, but prolonged use often leads to erratic behavior, paranoia, and hallucinations. Too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
Meth users might excel at repetitive tasks for extended periods, making it appealing in labor intensive environments. However, long term use results in severe physical and psychological deterioration, including meth mouth, skin lesions, and cognitive impairment.
So
I've
remember
heard some
those?
stories about meth mouth.
Yeah. When I was looking this up, I could not help but see images of it. Yeah, no, that is no. Mm. And we're gonna get a little bit more what it does to the teeth too. But just thinking about the Nazis and the soldiers, meth users might excel at repetitive tasks for extended periods, making it appealing in labor-intensive environments. They were seeing the results, but they weren't thinking about the long-term effects.
Right,
Even though what we're talking about is a little bit different, meth or I guess amphetamines, but still,
right.
yeah. Okay, I'll get off that. Prolonged use of methamphetamine can lead to severe health conditions affecting multiple organ systems. It can damage the liver, kidneys, and lungs. It often results from prolonged restricted blood flow, while blood vessels in the brain and throughout the body can also suffer significant harm. Restricted blood flow to the bowel can cause tissue death, and methamphetamine use is associated with gum disease, missing skin, and decayed, worn down teeth. Missing skin and
Mm-hmm.
decayed? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
man. That would be the lesions that you would see for prolonged meth
Right,
use. Yeah,
right,
okay.
right. Neurological effects include hyperreflexivity originating in the deep tendons and involuntary muscle spasms. Malnutrition and muscle atrophy are common due to poor diet and the drug's catabolic effects. Pulmonary issues such as hypertension, edema, and other respiratory diseases may arise, especially when meth is inhaled. Additionally, users face an increased risk of infectious diseases, including hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and HIV/AIDS, due to weakened immune systems and unsafe practices. These widespread and devastating effects highlight the severe risks associated with methamphetamine abuse.
Um, Crystal meth, also called blade, crank, hot ice, tina, and trash, belongs to large belongs to a large scale belongs to large class of Schedule II drugs called methamphetamines. While some methamphetamines have therapeutic value and are prescribed for a variety of reasons such as weight loss, narcolepsy, and ADHD, crystal meth is produced in illegal meth labs and it is illicit drug. So we're not saying your ADHD medicine or your narcolepsy medicine or your weight loss medicine is crystal meth. Crystal meth is what's produced illegally.
Right.
Okay.
Despite regulations like the Combat Methamphetamine Epidemic Act of 2005, meth production persists. The act has been incorporated into the Patriot Act signed by President Bush on March 9th, 2006. It also has over-the-counter sales of cold medicines that contain the ingredient pseudoephedrine, which is commonly used to make methamphetamine.
Pseudoephedrine.
Pseudoephedrine, you're right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're fine. Hey, I
What
do
did
it
I say?
enough. You said pseudoephedrine.
Oh,
Pseudoephedrine.
fair enough. Okay.
Okay. So the sale of cold medicine containing pseudoephedrine is limited to behind the counter, as Kat said. The amount of pseudoephedrine that an individual can purchase each month is limited, and individuals are required to present a photo identification to purchase products containing Sudafed or pseudoephedrine. In addition, stores are required to keep personal information about purchases for at least 2 years. So, when you go to your pharmacy to get your cold medicine that contains pseudoephedrine, you're going to have to show your ID, and then that's going to be on file for 2 years. But you're limited to the amount that you can purchase. And I wish I'd included the limits, but anyway.
I think it also depends on like how much you got last time or something. But I think it's usually once a month,
Yes,
depending on the pharmacy that you go to.
it is once a month, and I had to do this when I got my certification. I can't remember what it is per month, and I know that somebody's going to tell me when this episode comes out.
Right.
Okay.
As we stated in the beginning, the history of methamphetamine is both fascinating and troubling. First synthesized in 1983, meth evolved from its initial medical use to become a powerful, highly addictive illicit drug. The widespread availability of precursor chemicals like ephedrine and pseudoephedrine fueled illegal production, particularly in the 1990s, leading to devastating societal and health impacts.
Despite regulatory measures like the Combat Methamphetamine Epidemic Act of 2005, meth remains a persistent challenge due to its severe effects on the brain and the body. It damages vital organs, suppresses the immune system, and creates an overwhelming risk of addiction. While methamphetamine has legitimate medical applications, its illegal counterpart, crystal meth, is a stark reminder of the destructive potential of drug abuse.
Wow.
Yeah.
I definitely am not surprised about the military being served meth on a platter.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I could see how the Nazis, and like I've always heard that Nazis used it. And then doing the research when I found out that, the Allies or the Axis were using it too, it's like, wait, what? Um, so yeah.
Yep. No, that did not surprise me at all. I mean, there's been a lot of experiments that way.
And I think you called it out in one of our episodes when you said we should do a list of drugs that were once over the counter or, like radium. And what I know there's a bunch, like I know at one time
Oh
some
my, that's a lot. Yeah.
so maybe we just kind of do, something kind of like we did our silly
Silly laws.
laws.
Yeah,
Maybe
no,
we
I
do something
agree.
kind of like that.
Yes. I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah.
I mean, you could also do, you could add cosmetics in there because back in the day, royal folks put all kinds of stuff on their skin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh.
I think this episode was eye-opening for, we've already done one on opioids, and we know that addiction is a problem. And we know that it's hard. It can be a challenge to overcome, but if you're willing, there's help and resources out there for you.
Exactly. And I hope you find it if you're struggling.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And we should do an episode on AA and NA.
yes.
Maybe we'll do that after this one.
The U.S. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP.
So if you or someone you love is fighting addiction, like I said, like Kat said, there's help. And that number again is 1-800-662-HELP.
William and I want to thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you.
Join the Facebook group at Info on the Go.
Share your ideas with us.
Or ask us a question.
Subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcast.
Send us a text using the link in the show notes or leave a review.
Till next time.
Stay curious.